They didn't have a Pasternak injury, but they did have a Hampus Lindholm and a Charlie McAvoy injury. They could not overcome those injuries. But you look at the Boston Bruins. They beat the Blues 5-2. They beat the Jets 6-3. And sure, those teams aren't perfect right now. Those teams are having their problems. But it is noticeable that this team, they battle, they compete, and then they welcome stars back. That's a good combination. That is a good combination for this team. Goes without saying. But Pasternak, McAvoy, they make it look easy in their comebacks. By the way, I am solo today. Ryan Garvin behind the glass. Ryan, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm having a great morning, Ty. How are you?
Doing wonderful. I'm doing wonderful. So we got some technical difficulties going on today, as we talked about before the show went live. So if you are one of these people who likes to download the podcast after, might be a little hard this week. So we will direct you to YouTube, because we are actually live on YouTube, I believe. Are we live or just recording?
No, we're live.
We're live on YouTube.
We're live on YouTube.
So if you want to pull it up on YouTube, you can see how tired I am. I'm very exhausted. That's available for you as well. We also, again, we have your calls, 617-779-0985. It's a practice day in Minnesota for the Boston Bruins, so we'll be talking with Ryan Johnston at 9:30 and Bob Beers at 10:30. But again, I just come back to this point, Ryan, that this Bruins team, you know, when you win games without David Pasternak and Charlie McAvoy, and then you bring them back, boy, that's a nice thing to have in your back pocket there.
I can't believe that this team has weathered the storm as well as they have. And really, it's not just this stretch, Ty. It's been all year. Like, I don't know if they've really had a substantial amount of games where they have had all their top guys ready and available. I know in recent weeks, Pasta's been down. Both Lindholms have been down. Obviously, Charlie McAvoy has been going through it. And the thing I always worry about is that guys try to do too much of what their better teammates, for, you know, a lack of a better term, try to do, when I've always thought the philosophy should just be like, do what you do, but just do a little bit more of it. And hopefully, if everybody's kind of knowing where they need to be, we can piece this together and walk away with 2 points. So I've been very impressed. And I mean, you definitely saw it in that last game with Winnipeg, where, you know, Charlie McAvoy looked like he was basically where he needed to be, which was nice, because I know, oh my God, I'm blanking. Who did they lose? Which defenseman did they lose early in that game?
They lost Aspero.
Yeah. You know, so they're already skating with 5 guys. I know Mason Lohrei's struggles have been well documented, but to kind of look at the sunny side of things, like they're doing really well. And I don't know if that is coaching, is that team leadership, is that maybe they're a little better than I am willing to give them credit for. Whatever it is that has them playing so well despite being shorthanded on the top end, like it's very commendable. You know, it's got to make you feel good. If you're a Bruins fan, you got to feel good about, you know, the state of this team right now. I'm not saying they're all in. They're one of the top contenders, but I think they're definitely a little further along than at least I would have given them credit for at this time of year.
Yeah, I think that, you know, you nailed it right there. And McAvoy comes back, and normally you want to ease guys in, right? You don't want them to come in and immediately play as much as he did in his first game back. But yeah, as you mentioned, you lose Aspero, and it kind of has to happen. He has a team high 33 shifts. He plays over 24 minutes. He's a +4. Like, hard to get better than that, right? Especially because I think at least one of the goals, 2 goals for power play goals. You're not getting pluses on power play goals. So he's a +4. He's on the ice for all their goals that you can get pluses for. That's impressive. That's a good night. And you said, you know, you don't know where it is or how it's happening, and I just think it's believability. I think this team believes in the structure. They're bought into how they have to play, and you see it. They grind teams down. You know, I asked Marco about it a few weeks ago, where, you know, what a weapon that is, right? To have your identity be weaponized physicality, where you are grinding teams down. And if you don't have your game, you can say, you know what, let's just be a bunch of jerks for a little while here. Let's try to get them angry and make them play our game. You know, they're the drag them to the river Bruins, where they're going to they are going to make you play the street fight. They're gonna try to do their best to make you do that, and they've been successful at it. And I thought after the game on Thursday, Marco talked about that again and mentioned how the way they're playing allows them to overcome injuries. The way they're playing, they batter teams for 40 minutes, and then by the third period, that team has nothing left, and that's when the skill guys can kind of take over. You saw that. Third period, look at that fifth goal they score. Morgan Geekie beats out an icing. David Pastrnak puts it on a tee for Elias Lindholm. We could have scored that goal. That's how good of a play that was, right? He puts it right in his tape, right in front of the net, bing, bang, easy goal. Game over. That's what they've done. They've been able to wear teams down, right? And, we keep saying this, right? This is, I don't know, this is probably like our 12th show now this year. I don't know. Time is an illusion. But we this is like our 12th show this week, or this season. And we keep saying, we don't know if it's sustainable. We don't know if they can keep being this team, but they keep being this team. And at a certain point, we have to go, this is who they are. I'm not worried about it. This is who they are. This is who they are until proven otherwise. And I do think that, everyone talks about sustainability, right? Like, oh, well, Swayman's playing so well. Who knows if we can keep playing like this? The power play's been so good. Who knows if it can be like this? The PK's been great. Who knows if that's how they really are? Well, I don't know. They kind of are. I'm not saying blindly love them and look at everything they do as perfect, but sometimes teams are just good beyond all reason. And this feels like that Bruins team right now where, they're getting goals all over the lineup, right? You're having a 2-goal night from Mark Kastelik. You're having Alex Steeves come up and score a bunch of goals. They've kind of become, I don't want to say slump-proof, but every time you think, oh, here comes the cliff, something else happens. You're like, oh, no, they actually won 4-2. They won 5-2. Sure, I'll take it. That's kind of where they are right now, and I think that's, you take that right now.
And even if, and that's just it. I think if you can get that kind of combination of, okay, maybe some guys on your third line, maybe Tanner Jeannot is in a little bit of a slump. Even Pavel Zacha, who's been probably a point a night kind of guy, if he's not hitting, if Morgan Geekie is going to continue doing what he's doing, if David Pastrnak, who's kind of, I don't want to say he's been under the radar this year, but I just kind of feel like that's who he is in this city, where it's like, wow, he is a guy that is totally capable of scoring 50 goals every year. But if those guys can just kind of maintain and pick up the slack when needed, that's another aspect of this team I did not foresee and I know we were definitely talking about it at the start of the season, is where is your scoring going to come from? Well, they've shown that they can get production from their middle six. And if you're going to get production from your middle six, and you have at least one or two guys that you can rely on to give you at least a goal a night, you're probably going to end up winning more games than you end up losing. And I think back to what Marco Sturm was saying at the beginning of the year when they were scuffling and questioning, what kind of team are we going to be? Because in Sturm's words, he's like, I know what we are. He is a team that, as you say, you can take him to the river and not be so open and fast and like a finesse team. They are a team that if they can get up, they are going to grind you down. What I'm interested in, Ty, is what you're seeing from this team as far as their buy-in. And I know it's a new group, but it seems like whatever Marco Sturm and his staff are preaching to this team, they're with it completely. And I'm wondering what differences you noticed early on from Sturm compared to when Jim Montgomery first got here. I know Joe Sacco kind of got a raw deal, but one of the big consistent issues that this franchise has dealt with is tuning out their coaches and just being over what the messaging is. And they've had some good guys come through here that can't get through to this team in the long run. I'm not saying that's what will happen with Marco Sturm, but I guess I'm kind of surprised that it's taken as well as it has so far. So what is it that Marco Sturm is doing with this team right now that maybe Jim Montgomery or even Bruce Cassidy might have struggled with early on?
Well, I think that Sturm is more tactician than Jim Montgomery. I think Jim Montgomery is he's a vibes guy. He goes with his gut. He goes with his instincts. It kind of did him in, I think, in a weird way. Being that kind of guy, not adjusting and relying on your players. Yeah, that's nice when it's working. when it doesn't work, it's kind of a mess. And I think Marco is very black and white. I think he explains what he wants to his players right out of the gate, and they know what to do. That it doesn't change on them, right? And I feel like that was something that, talking to players, both with Bruce and with Jim Montgomery, like, they felt that, who am I, right? And that would change basically from week to week, season to season. Hey, I want you to be more of an agitator. Hey, stop taking penalties. What are you doing that for? And the guy's like, what do you want me to do? You told me to be this guy. Hey, use your shot more. Hey, come not getting to the front of the net and banging away. It's like, well, I thought you want me to shoot more. Like, I can tell these stories now. It's not telling stories out of school here. During the 2024 playoffs, the Boston Bruins were trying to play a brand of hockey that they were not built to play anymore. That was from coaching. And there was a player that I talked to who said, I don't know why we're playing this way. I don't know why we're playing this way. We're not built to play this way. And I was like, what do you mean by that? He goes, we should just be firing shots on goal. I don't know why we're looking for odd man rushes. I don't know why we're looking for 2-on-1s. We do not create enough of those. We are not that kind of team. We are a throw it on net, bang away, cash in that way kind of team. I don't know why we're not taking more of those shots. And I was very surprised. I was like, you're in the middle of a playoff round. Like, what's going on? He's like, well, we need to change how we're playing. If we're
you're questioning what the game plan is, and where it's coming from.
Yeah, and that's when I was like, oh no, something's going on here. And then sure enough, Montgomery's gone, 6 months later, basically. And I think that was something that it was a real thing, that players were wondering why they weren't adjusting, right? And I think Montgomery kept coaching like he had the 22-23 team the entire time he was here. He kept coaching like he had superstars on his roster. He may have said we don't have those players, but he never adjusted how he wanted to play, at least in my opinion, and talking to players in the team, and that was kind of a vibe that I got. Marco tells you what he wants you to do, and if you don't play it that way, you're not going to play. I look at Mason Lohrei. He told Lohrei, like, hey, you got to stop playing like that. You're not, like, we're not playing that system. If you don't want to play that system, you're not going to play. And sure enough, Lohrei sits for 5 games, comes back, is a much more sound player. He's never going to be perfect, but he's playing within the system and the structure. That's, I think, the biggest difference. The system and the structure is outlined, plain English, black and white. This is what we do. If you don't do it, you're not going to play.
Which is a really interesting approach for a team that, isn't banged out with star caliber players, at least like household name star. I think, Morgan Geekie is definitely going to catch on in the league with the production that he's had. But compared to those teams that you were just referencing, like, this was a team going into the year where, ownership, management, even your coaches were saying, we need guys to step up. And it felt like that was a refrain that they had been making through the early parts of the season. And I've always thought that, like, if you have a team like that, you're not really in a position where you can just start benching guys retroactively. Like, even if, you still need the bodies, like, regardless of what Mason Lohrei is giving you, you still need to have a physical human body out there playing the game of hockey. You're not so well off that you can just start handing out discipline. Shows what I know, because that, on top of other things that have happened this year, have apparently from the outside seem like they have registered with this team. Marco Sturm, after a win, was saying, no, we might have got lucky. We might have got lucky with the goaltending, but this is the style that we are playing is not the team that we are. And that's a crazy thing for a first year head coach in a new city to say to a group of guys that, again, some are new, some are not, though. Some have been here for a while. And I would probably feel a kind of way, hear my coach go, what do you mean? I think I know how I would play better than you would. Maybe not. Maybe, as it turns out, Marco Sturm looked at this team and goes, I know exactly the style of hockey that we need to play in order to win more games than we are going to lose.
Yeah, and I think he's the best of both worlds. I think he's the former NHL player who communicates in a way that is very blunt, and I think for him it's more, it is about finding who are your pieces of the future and who can hang, right? Like, because they're committed to him. They're not going to blow out another coach. They're not gonna, like Sweeney's got a 2-year deal, right? This is I want to say his 5th coach. I think, well, if you include Sacco, this is his 5th coach. They're not going to let him fire another coach. Like you're committed to this guy, right? So you have to find out who is part of your core and who isn't. You have to adjust on the fly. So when guys like Lohrei sit and come back and play well, that's encouraging. Now they have to keep it up. They have to sustain it. But this is part of the job as well for him, is finding out guys that are going to be part of what they do moving forward when they are, let's say, a true cup contender. They've been good. They're not there yet, though, right? Like right now, they're a playoff team. That's good. After being the fifth worst team in hockey a year ago, to be back in the playoffs, that's good. But you're not a cup contender just yet. So you have to kind of make the steps to get there, and you got to figure out who's part of that and who's going to be trade fodder. That's a challenge for the Bruins. 617-779-0985. Quick break here. Sorry, we're up against it. And then all your phone calls. Steve, Mike, I see you guys on the line here on the Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show.
The Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show will continue with Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beer.
Hey, Ty, how you doing this week?
Good, you?
Couple quick, good. One of the things that I look at with the Bruins is that I think they're really hurting on defense for depth players. They got a lot of depth in the organization at goal. They got a lot of depth in the organization at forward. They could really use a right-handed D, I think, to add to the mix, because I'm not sure I'll refer to him as a joker is the answer. And Pete's playing a lot of minutes, and, McAvoy's is coming back from a broken jaw. So I think they have to be careful there. And I think what they might want to do is take a look at some teams that are looking to get younger down the road. Now, there's an opportunity. Arvidsson is out at the right wing. If he's out for a certain length of time, a good idea would be to bring up a guy like myself who leads Providence in goals at 11 and see, give him a shot as a second-line right wing with some offensive players and see if he can play and if he's going to be an NHL player. Maybe use him as part of a trade. And the other spot to look at is, I look at the Bussy kid that's played at Carolina. He played with the Bruins, Providence was really good. And they just never found a spot for him, and they never moved him or traded him. They've got two similar goalies in Providence right now that have been lights out. And, it doesn't make any sense to sit on two goalies in the AHL and neither of them never having a chance to play for the big team, for the Bruins. So I'd be interested what you think of those thoughts, Ty. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. The Lysell conversation remains an interesting one in terms of I don't know how much longer you want to have him marinate in Providence before he's up here. Now, if Arvidsson is out, that does create an opportunity for him. Now, what the Bruins will say, though, is that, they already have two extra forwards up here with Asamont and Vial, and they don't want to alienate those guys by bringing somebody else up from Providence. They want to give them a shot at, being in their lineup. And it's never a great look when someone comes up from Providence and immediately leapfrogs guys that have been on your team all year long, which is a problem. But yeah, no, right shot D remains an issue for them. That's the only downside of trading Brandon Carlo. You trade Brandon Carlo and you like the return. You do it every day of the week, but it did create a hole for you on that right side. And right shot D are hard to find. We talked about this last week with Bob Beers and Ryan Johnston, and I feel like the best way to build that right shot D pipeline is to just draft one. I don't know if trading for Rasmus Anderson from Calgary is the answer. I don't know if you're there yet as a contender. He's going to have a hot market. Who knows if he even gets traded, but that's something that, he might not have a hot market, or he might have a hot market that makes sense for teams that are closer to a cup than you are right now. And that's something I think if you're the Bruins to watch. And, there are teams out there that you can look at, like there's Nashville, there's Buffalo. Like, there are teams that are going to be selling. It's just, what do they have on the right side that really intrigues you? All right. We're going to take another break. Mike, when we come back, we're going to talk with Ryan Johnston, and we're going to answer your call together. Going to get RJ to answer some calls while he's out in Minnesota. Give him something to do here on the Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show.
Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beer.
practice is in St. Paul, but we have chosen to spend a few days in downtown Minneapolis.
You got to feel really good, too. I mean, you're in Minnesota. It's the holiday season. You got to feel like Jingle All the Way just every day of your life here. You got to feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger in that 1990s classic, baby, Jingle All the Way. It's a great movie. Underrated Christmas movie, Ryan, by the way, my opinion.
In Jingle All the Way, I don't believe it was 5 below zero, which is what it is right now as I look at my the temperature gauge on my phone. 5 below zero, low of -14, and a high of 2 above today.
That's one of those ones where you look at the window and you just go, gross, and then you do nothing the rest of the day. That's how I would feel if I were out there. Ryan, we kicked off a show talking about this today, and you know, I at the risk of simplifying things to an absurd degree, I mean, how good is it to have David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy back in your lineup for the Boston Bruins, who made it look easy, I would say borderline easy at times, on both Tuesday with Pastrnak back and Thursday in Winnipeg?
Yeah, you know, the scary thing about Pasta, too, is he didn't even look like he was anywhere close to the top of his game against St. Louis, but yet there he is at the end of the game with 3 assists, right? That's the impact that a guy like that can have, that, you know, something special can happen every time he touches the puck. And so, you know, I thought it was interesting the way that Marco Sturm has chosen to use him here in his first couple games back. You know, puts him with Minton and Hustadinov instead of maybe throwing him back into the mix with, you know, with Geekie and Elias Lindholm or something along those lines. And, you know, it really pays dividends. Minton ends up with a couple of goals. You spread out the scoring and the offensive threats even more on this lineup than you already had. And then McAvoy comes back the other night. And, you know, I would say that that's probably ahead of schedule, from what most of us expected, especially after he said he was still, you know, weeks away from eating solid food. But, you know, he admitted that after that he's, you know, started to cheat a little bit on that diet and put some weight back on. And he came back in that last game, and man, he was going. Just the skating was there. He was flying up and down the ice. Ends up being a +4 on the night. You know, gets an assist as well. It's you know, your team did everything that they could and did a great job of kind of weathering the storm, keeping their head above water with those 2 guys out of the lineup, in addition to all the other injuries that they've been dealing with and will continue to deal with here going forward. But you know, you couldn't have asked for better returns from what we've seen of those guys so far.
Yeah, and to your point, Ryan, the way that Charlie was skating out there, the way he was flying around, the Bruins outshot Winnipeg 11-5 at 5-on-5 play with the Charlie McAvoy out there. They also outscored Winnipeg 3-0 over that sample. When he was on the bench at 5-on-5, the Bruins were outshot 16-8. You know, like that just kind of speaks to the skating game, the way he was able to keep pushing the pace the other way. And, you know, I thought it was really impressive because of all those things you mentioned. The losing the weight. He said ahead of the flight on Monday that he's about halfway back to where he should be. But I mean, I'm not gonna he didn't look like a guy who has been liquefying foods you should liquefy the last few weeks here. And I think that's important. And the Bruins overall are now 10-2. When they have Lindholm, McAvoy, and Zadorov in their lineup at the same time, and they're 9-11 without when one of those guys is missing, and so it feels like it's their backbone, and it's been their backbone without fail, when they have all 3 of those guys upright and in action for their team.
Yeah, I would imagine it probably helped too. They rode McAvoy to 24 minutes plus the other night. I think Peak was the only guy who went.
Did we lose Ryan?
Listen, I guess as the game goes on, and they're not going to put him in a position where he's going to potentially hurt himself. But it's up to him to say, okay, I feel good if the legs are still there in the third period. But as you guys mentioned earlier, they lost Aspero in the first period of that game, so you're down to 5D. So you kind of need him, at that point to step up and say, okay, I'm willing to push it beyond maybe where we had planned. I don't know, exactly what they were targeting going in, but 24 minutes is a lot for a guy who hadn't played a game in a month and had some practices. But as he told us, the morning of the game, when we didn't even know officially that he was going to be in at that point, but he said, you get some practices, but I kind of need games to get myself back into shape. There's only so much you can do practice-wise and skating-wise by yourself. You got to get in there and mix it up a bit. And so, they were able to get him that game, and then, a couple of days off. Yesterday was a full day off. They didn't practice or anything like that. They're going to practice later this morning, and then, and ramp up for a late afternoon game here in Minnesota tomorrow.
One thing you mentioned was the Pastrnak playing with the Pastrnak line there with Minton and Husnudinov, and a little bit of shuffling by the end of the game. He was playing with Geekie and a Lindholm in the third period. Obviously, that fifth goal happens because that line is together. But two things noticeable to me, Ryan, these last two games here has been the even deployment, I would say, of ice time for players. I think Sean Kuraly led all skaters on Tuesday night, in which how many times are you going to see your fourth line center, leading your team among forwards and ice time? But it feels like right now they have struck a good balance there where they're not leaning on anybody too much. And keeping guys fresh and realizing that you can't ride these guys 20-plus minutes a night up front, every night. And what have you thought about that so far in the distribution of ice time, I should say?
Yeah, it really stands out. You said Kuraly, 16 minutes even was the most of all the forwards. Everybody at the forward position had at least 13 minutes of ice time. So, it was literally, and some of that had to do with the fact that, there just weren't a lot of penalties in that game. I think each team had 2 power plays. It was pretty clean game. Outside of the first period, I don't think there were any penalties. So for the most part, once they got through, those couple of penalty kills in the first period, they were able to roll 4 lines the rest of the night. And, they knew, and, they talk about it a lot. And, you mentioned it earlier about how, they kind of wear these teams down as the game goes on, make them play their style, make them get physical, make them work for everything. And, in that game, I think St. Louis, they said to us after the game that, they felt like, St. Louis was kind of at the tail end of a busy stretch, and they were probably going to wear out what come the third period. We've heard that a few times lately. I would imagine we may hear it again tomorrow, since Minnesota's playing today and the Bruins will have 2 days off going into that game, while the Wild are on a back-to-back. I would imagine that'll be kind of the same blueprint tomorrow. It's like, just tenderize them for 2 periods and in the third period be the stronger team. And, and that formula is working. We have brought it up a number of times here over the course of the last week, especially, but the Bruins, when they get the lead through 2, have not lost this year. They are 15-0 in that department. And, that says a lot about the style of play and their ability to close out these games.
Yeah, and we keep talking about this, right? I feel like we keep talking about like, oh, the bottom's going to fall out. The bottom's going to fall out. At a certain point, don't we have to say, like, they might just be this team. They might be one of these teams that is full of surprises in a positive manner all year long, where they lose a guy and another guy comes up and now he's playing well. We're hitting the halfway point here, right? And we haven't seen the bottom fall out. Yeah, they've lost some games, but they've immediately made them up with a winning streak. It's really impressive to me, and I'm kind of running out of ways. And again, I said this off the bat, not to be just like everything is awesome, just enjoy the ride kind of guy, but at a certain point, like, this might be just who they are, Ryan.
Well, you're 19-13. And 6 of those losses came in a row in the first 10 games of the season, right? You had, so outside of that, the stumbles out of the start after you win 3 straight and you're feeling good about yourself, and then you kind of go into this spin. But once they come out of that, they've been much better than 500 the rest of the way. And there's a feeling around the team that you can just tell that they believe in Marco Sturm and what he's asking them to do. It's almost funny to hear, the players, they all kind of have the same talking points. You talk to them and, we ask them asked them questions off the ice. We asked them questions, during our quick intermissions or our post-game show. And, and you hear the same things over and over again. The message has gotten through. And they understand, and it took them a little bit. That 6-game losing streak was a good learning time, and I think Marco Sturm kind of admits that now, that that maybe it was good that we went through that early on in the season, because it taught these guys how we have to play if we're going to be successful, and how we can't play if we're going to lose games. And so you hear that kind of belief in the players when they speak to you. You hear that belief, I think, in Marco Sturm now. He's, I think he understands exactly the team that he's got. He understands how they can be successful. They're showing it now on a regular basis. They're showing it, in some cases against some pretty good teams. I mean, Minnesota's going to be a really tough test coming up tomorrow. But, ultimately, I kind of agree that, once you're past, we kind of use that American Thanksgiving as the benchmark, but every team in the league now, or almost every team in the league now, is past 30 games. That's a pretty good sample size. You're 9 games short of the halfway point of the season. Kind of are what you are at this point, right? And that's why you get to that point where teams have played 25 games or so, and then GMs kind of they feel like they have a better sense of what their teams are and what direction that they need to go, and that's when you start seeing some moves being made here around the league. And so I think 32 games in at 19-13, we got a pretty good sample of what the Bruins are, and you never know what's going to happen with injuries down the road or what have you, but as this team is comprised, they're a pretty good hockey team. They really are.
Yeah, and that's kind of, when you're bringing up Jonathan Aspero, right, and he's becoming a lineup fixture for your roster, right, and he's a +8 through 19 games, and he's got 32 hits, 28 blocks, whatever it is, like, all right, you found something there. Then you bring up Alex Steves, and now Steves is scoring at the same clip as some of the best players in the NHL since being called up. You're kind of like, I mean, maybe this is just one of their years where everything is coming up Bruins, and that's okay. And I really do feel like, listen, I got to tip my cap to management and to the coaching staff, because when I saw what they did on July 1, I was like, oh no, it's going to be a bad year. They're investing so much in character that it makes you think they're going to be a bad team, and they're going to need guys that are going to be, answering the questions and keep the morale high and fighting and doing stuff to keep the fans interested. But no, they've just built a good locker room led by a good head coach who's very direct and very firm, but not in a way that alienates players. And I think that's been really impressive. I think it's just the roster building and the message without sacrificing offense. They enter the weekend as I think the fifth most goals in the NHL, and 5-on-5 wise they are top 10 as well. I believe they're 8th or 9th. So it's been really impressive, the contributions they're getting, and at a certain point I just have to feel like, okay, this is who they are, and until proven otherwise. I'm giving them that benefit of the doubt right now, despite what people may say about the bottom falling out on this team. Ryan, before we let you go though, they're going to see a Minnesota team that pulled off a massive move on Friday night. And I got to be honest, I did not see this one coming. Quinn Hughes traded to the Wild for a pretty good return. But what do you think of that trade and what it can do for the Wild?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a pretty clear indication, right, that they're going for it. I saw, I forget who it was, but I saw someone on Twitter or something last night say, the Stanley Cup window has opened in Minnesota now, right? I mean, they've got, you've got a player, players like Kaprizov up front. You've got Quinn Hughes. You've got a pretty good goaltending tandem here. You've got, you've got a lot of pieces in place to try to make a run. And, it seems pretty clear that, that Bill Guerin, I mean, this is a massive swing here. He gave up a lot, but he gets a great player that we all expected would be moving at some point. But I think you're right. I don't think Minnesota was on too many people's radar. So good for Billy Guerin to pull off this deal. Interested to see how it all fits together. But they've got a really good player who is going to have a nightly impact on this team and give them a better chance to compete with the big boys out in the West here. And they have already been doing that for the most part. They've gotten on a really good run here since the early part of the season. I think they're something like 14-3-2 in their last 19 games. So they kind of, I think, proved to management that, this is a team that's getting themselves in a position that they can compete potentially for a Stanley Cup. And now they get a big piece added on to that. The people here in Minnesota, I would imagine, are going to be very excited about this deal, and they should be.
Yeah, and speaking about Vancouver, that's a team that, that's the other side of the coin, where the Bruins could have been, right? We're talking about the Bruins being a pleasant surprise. Vancouver's the opposite, where you spend money, you want to win now, and it hasn't come together for whatever reason. Players not delivering on their big contracts, guys being unhappy, trading key players. Obviously, JT Miller last year, and now Quinn Hughes, their captain. That's an example of sort of it not working out, right? And you want to win now, but are you investing in the right players? That's always a concern for the Bruins, and they've managed to not be the Canucks, which is always a positive. It feels like, right?
Yeah, and you kind of feel for the fans in Vancouver. When you travel up to these Canadian cities, how much they invest in their teams, on a daily basis, and how much media coverage there is, and all of that. But they're also, kind of in a lot of ways are always behind the eight ball when it comes to attracting talent. You've got the situation with the Canadian dollar versus the U.S. dollar, and ticket prices in Canada versus ticket prices in the United States, and there's a lot of issues that come with that, and you see it in places like Winnipeg and Vancouver, and it's tough to build a winning team because you're not exactly the most attractive market there, and money can be a little tighter and all of that. And so, when you do get a player the caliber of Quinn Hughes to get into a position where you end up having to trade him away because, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a long-term fit, that's heartbreaking, right? That should be a guy that your organization, once you've got him, does everything in your power to keep him and make him happy and make sure that he can stay. To a different extent, we see it with a guy like McDavid in Edmonton, who just kind of gets to a point now where he says, listen, I'll take a short-term contract, clock's ticking, you guys got to help me win a Stanley Cup. Right. And from Quinn Hughes' standpoint, you probably look at it the same way, where he's up in Vancouver. They're not really going anywhere. They're at the bottom of the Western Conference right now, bottom of the league, actually, I think, in points percentage. And he's going, I don't want to waste years here waiting for you guys to rebuild around me. Let's get something going here. Let's I want to get to a contender. And now he is.
Absolutely. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Try to stay warm out there, and we look forward to hearing you on the call tomorrow night.
I appreciate it, Ty.
Absolutely. That was Ryan Johnston joining us live from Minneapolis. The land of Jingle All the Way, Ryan. Great movie.
I can't get past the -5 degrees.
No. You wouldn't get me out of the hotel. I'd be like, nah, we're good here. I'll watch your YouTube videos later. I'm all right.
Can I call the game from Zoom? Can we figure a way that I never ever have to leave? Yeah. You know what? I live here now. Until the summertime. I'm not leaving.
We were talking about this the other day in a podcast that I do with Connor Ryan about covering Bruins games during COVID and how weird it was. It was so weird. It was so weird being in empty arenas that were piping in crowd noise. It was just so uncomfortable and so bizarre, and I can't believe it happened.
Was the pumped-in crowd noise weird, or were the cardboard cutouts of fans like something you would see in the Twilight Zone weird? Because that, I look back, you watch biggest hits in hockey or sickest dangles or whatever, and you're just looking around and you're like, oh my God, this is surreal. I forget that is what we were willing to do in order to continue to have sports is, no, we'll just make cutouts of fans and put them all over the place.
Yeah, there was a clip that I
Very
watched
eerie.
where it was like a Pete Alonso home run at Fenway, and it was like during the 2020 season, and I was like, why is the stadium empty? I was like, were they lose? I was like, oh wait, like I was shocked by what was happening. Yeah, I remember we were all watching like Korean baseball because like that was the only sport going at one
Nothing
point.
going.
And it was just like, all right, word. What a weird time. Yeah, no, the weirdest thing was after a game, sometimes the people in the control room of the Garden would forget to turn off the crowd noise. So you'd just be sitting in a completely empty, still arena, nobody on the ice, nobody on the benches, and you just hear like the faint cheer of a crowd. You're like, wow, this is like being. I felt like Will Smith in I Am Legend. I'm like, this is not what you want. This is not how you want to live your life. It's just not good.
It's all the non-people there celebrating your awesome write-up of a St. Louis Blues game. You're like, yeah, that is great.
I never want to go back to that. Never, ever, ever. 617-779-0985. Quick break here and all your phone calls, getting to them here on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Stay tuned for more of the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show on the Sports Hub. Ryan Johnston and Bob Pierce.
Well, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. It is Ty Anderson live from the Town Fair Tire Studios here on the Shaws and Star Market Hockey Show. We talked with Ryan Johnston last segment. We're going to talk with Bob Beers in the 10 o'clock hour around 10:30. And your phone calls here, 617-779-0985. Going in order of weight here, we got Matt in New Bedford. Matt, what's going on today?
Hey, Ty. Thanks for taking the call. Number one, great take on the Tony Hawk pro skater reference. I think for me personally, it's more for CKY, Quite Bitter Beings.
Oh, yeah.
But that's just me. 2 David Pastrnak takes real quick. Number one, I'm sure you've heard Felger's rants about Pastrnak being out on the extra skater situation and trying to go for a goal or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you like it? And me personally, I kind of don't, because he's not really a defensive player, but at the same time, at least he's making plays and not trying to shoot it from his own end all the way down and getting icing calls or whatever. I don't know if that's like a league thing, because I see it all the time now, but whatever happened to just trying to make a play in the neutral zone, get it down deep, or trying to score from the neutral zone. And number 2, Pastrnak, I like him on this Ustadinov-Minton line. I think it gives a lot more depth to the lineup, doesn't overload. I'll put Zuma in my shirt. It gives a lot more depth to the Bruins team and for scoring. And I also really appreciate breaking up that first line, because I think Geeky and Lindholm and Steves is pretty good, and I think it just adds way more dynamic with Pastrnak, Minton for one-timers and Ustadinov's speed for just creating extra plays. What do you think?
Yeah, no, Matt, I agree. And honestly, it is about, I think it gives you better lineup balance. And I think what was really important about the 5 games that Pastrnak missed was that Morgan Geeky still scored goals. And, that's been something that Geeky has talked about in the past, is he wants to prove that he's more than a quote-unquote Pastrnak merchant. There is that feeling that he's good because he plays with Pastrnak. Well, he wants to prove that he's not, right? And if he can score without Pastrnak, now you have 2 game-breaking wingers that you can put on different lines, have a greater lineup balance. But then guess what? If it's a close game in the third period, you're chasing a deficit, you can put them back together. I love that. That's a great weapon. I wish they did that more with Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak as a line.
We had these issues with the perfection line and just why would you break them up? They're called the perfection line. I understand where Morgan Geeky is coming to a degree, and I think we talked about this when was it Yogi Haru? Somebody got moved up to fill in on the top line, and my take on it was, I think that means more that they know they can, the coaching staff knows they can put you on a top line or a top 2 line and know that you're not just going to be dead weight out there, that you are going to be able to, how do I put this? It's that, you might be a totally mid hockey player. I don't think that you're just going to get this huge boost because you're playing with Patrice Bergeron, because you're playing with David Pastrnak. You have to have something there in order for it to make any sense, in order for those lines to work. And whether it's Steves or Kuznetsov, I know Fraser Minton was with Pasta and Kuznetsov the other night. I think those are very important to coaching staff, front office, to know, all right, we can kind of expect that Pasta and now Morgan Geeky can roll out of bed and probably put the puck in the back of the net. Who can we put around them that is going to be able to get the most out of this line? I think that's not a slight against Morgan Geeky to go you should be benefiting from playing with one of the best wingers in hockey. That's just kind of how it's made out to be.
Yeah, and going to Matt's point as well, I love Minton playing with an offensive-minded player. I know Minton is a big fan of playing with Kastelik and Jeannot, and I don't hate that line by any stretch, but he's still so young, right, that I don't want to box him into being a defensive-minded forward right away. I want him to be more of a two-way kind of guy. I want him to be able to be comfortable creating offense, right, and trying to create offense, and I don't want to crush that part of his game already, right? He's still got room to grow there. I think he's 21 years old, I want to say. So, you don't want to say to him, you're a third-line checking center right now and forever. Like, no, you want to let him still be offensive, right? You want him to have his offensive instincts. That's what got him drafted. That's what made him a top prospect in the Leafs organization before getting traded here. And so I don't want to crush that part of his game. And so I think it throws him a bone as well. And it goes back to what we talked about with Ryan, the lineup balance, right? Like, you feel better about your team, having three lines effectively that can pot a few goals. Like that's huge. And what a revelation Steves has been, right? Like, this guy, you can throw him anywhere and you're going to get some offense out of that line too. And so
I think it just allows this coaching staff to look and go, okay, we know what we're going to get from Pasta. We know what we're going to get from Morgan Geekie. I mean, if you want to throw Steves into that, like, I don't think it might be a little premature, but he's absolutely showing flashes of, like, I belong here. And I think, again, going back to the beginning of the season, that is what this organization has been crying for. Part of it is their own doing, by the way, but they wanted guys to step up. There were so many opportunities on this team to get playing time and to get top 6 minutes. We're seeing it right now. We're seeing it with Kuznetsov. We're seeing, I think, Fraser Mitten playing with who he's playing with is up. But I think Alex Steves has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of, hey, we're not going to figure all of this out for you. You guys have to eventually take the ice and figure out who is going to lead this team to a win every night. And if it is Steves playing with Geekie and Lindholm, and maybe we bump Pavel Zacha down a line. Maybe Tanner Jeannot is going to be on that fourth line with Kastelik and Corrali. So be it. But I think I would rather have that predicament than we have one line that is so dominant, but the other three are so far behind that we run the risk of losing scoring and losing offense if we break up our best players. Like, I think they're starting, I shouldn't say starting to, but I think they've done a good job of figuring out who can excel where. And if your lines are going to be kind of malleable like this at this point of the season, then so be it. If they're winning, then I don't think, how they get there is most important. I think it's the placement of the players that's been working out for them.
I don't care about crossing sports. I don't believe in that. You can talk about whatever you want. I hate that rule, that 2 to 6 try saying. I understand it can be more of a Christian Campbell kind of move. Would you try to sign Steves right now and extend him? He's on a 1-year deal for $850K. He's a pending UFA. He fits in your structure. He's still pretty young. It's not like it's a 31-year-old coming in here and doing that. I think he's 26. I want to say I would kind of try to bang that out.
I would be interested. And I think if you take a step back and go, okay, this team, do you think it's unfair to say that they are overperforming right now based on what we thought this roster was going to be?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because I think a year ago was so bad, right? And you didn't know what to expect because last year was so bad, right? Like, I was pretty adamant. I did a summer of podcasting, a summer of appearances wherever, and the one thing I was confident in bouncing back was Jeremy Swayman. I was like, you got Geekie, you got Pastrnak. Geekie's got to prove himself. Pastrnak, I know what I'm getting there. Lindholm, I think, can be good if he's playing with Pastrnak or Geekie, but the goaltending will be better, so they will by default be a little bit better. I had them being 9th place in the Eastern Conference. I had them being the first team out. I had them, so I had them being competitive by those measurements. They're going to be competitive, but I didn't expect them to have a top 5 power play, a top 10 power play, a top 10 PK, to be top 5 in the league in goals scored, to be top 10 5-on-5 scoring wise. Like, I didn't see all of that coming. I should say, and so. Yes and no. I just think yes because last year was because you didn't see this part of it coming, but no because I knew that they'd have a natural uptick because everything went wrong a year ago, and that doesn't typically happen.
It's like, oh, they can't be worse than what they were.
Right, exactly. Like there's a level, like you have to almost build an intentionally bad roster to be worse than you were a year ago. Like, you have to trade Pastrnak for pennies on the dollar. You have to trade McAvoy. You have to trade Swayman. Like you have enough natural talent where you're not going to be that bad, if that makes sense.
No,
right?
I get that. And so to get back to the question of what do you do with Alex Steves, You say natural talent. I'll take it one step further. Natural young talent. He's 25 years old. In this, I asked the question of their expectations because I know the further we progress into the season, and I know we're way out ahead of it right now, but I mean, this is kind of where we are in the season. There's going to be a lot of people that if they maintain this level of success, a lot of people are, you got to go for it. You got to go for it. You got to go for it. And I'm still not there yet because of where this team ended up last year and having to get rid of a lot of pieces that had been here because it was just kind of time, I think. It was time for them to move on from a lot of guys and go, we're not going to win this way. Well, they found something in Alex Steves, 100%. And the pipeline of talent coming up from the AHL, it's going to take some time. So if you're telling me that you've got a guy that can skate with the top lines, can stick handle, can put the puck in the net, he's competent, he's a good teammate, his guys like him, his coaches like him, I think you absolutely look into trying to sign him maybe sooner rather than later. I'm not dying to get that move done today, but you evoked the name Christian Campbell. With the Red Sox, it's almost like they had to prove a point of, look at this guy. We made him. He had no expectations, and now look at him. He is a drive line champion. And what happened? He fell flat on his face because he was not ready to play. And I'm not saying he'll never be a good player, but looking at what the Bruins are doing, the Bruins aren't running around going, look at what we've got in Alex Steves. We developed him. We created it. It's none of that. It's here's a guy who had an opportunity to step in, and he has made the most of that opportunity. So on a team that still needs to really cement the talent around David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, yeah, I don't think that would be such a bad idea to try and have an Alex Steves on this team. And maybe we'll find other guys as we go forward. But as far as Alex Steves, yes or no, I'm a yes. I like what he has brought to this team. Do you think that they should entertain maybe extending him now?
They should. And I say that because finding affordable talent that thrives in a pipeline can sometimes be a challenge, right? Like, you're good at getting them in on the ground floor, which they have done with Alex Steves, but retaining those players can sometimes be difficult if they see a hot market. You know, like PTO Danton Heinen was one of the best bargains the Bruins ever had, right? Like, he made $1 million or whatever it was. He signed a prorated deal for league minimum, or again, whatever it was, and he was such a valuable weapon for your team. And then I think you made the mistake as a franchise the following year of saying, oh, we can find one of those guys. And you found Tyler Johnson, who was cooked. He was done. He had nothing left in the tank. He was gone after 9 games, whatever it was. He retired, all of that. If you can, when you have elite talent, the hard part is finding guys at the bottom of the roster that are cheap but can move up the lineup, right? You always look at a cup winner, and a cup winner will have like 4 or 5 guys that are making $8 million, $9 million, whatever. But then you look at the roster and you're like, where'd they get that guy from? And he's making $1.2 million, and he can move up and down their lineup, and he plays well with your star players, right? And so I think that's something that you need more of those players. Now, in a perfect world, prospects are taking those jobs. Bruins don't have many guys that you look at and say, yep, they're knocking at the door. We talked about Fabian Lysell. Still hasn't happened for him. Still hasn't happened for whatever reason. I don't know if it's going to happen for him, at least not here in Boston, but it's hard to find those kind of guys. So if you can find one and he likes it here and he wants to be here and you can sign him for under $1.5 million, like, I want to do that. I just do. I just feel like that's good investment right there. That's good. That's money well spent. It's, and those kind of moves allow you down the road to take a bigger swing elsewhere because you're like, well, we got 15 goals making $1 million. That's great. That's awesome for us, right? And so I think that allows you to take bigger swings if you don't have to commit big money. Like if you don't commit big money to bottom sixers, which has been a challenge at times. Like if you can get a guy locked in at $1 million, $1.5 million, and you know he has that kind of scoring potential, there's a lot there that you like. I would say it allows you to take a bigger swing at the top of the roster, which they need to do, in my opinion.
And I think at this point, I'm just going to repeat what I said. I think there are going to be a lot of fans clamoring for this team to make moves. If they continue the success that they are going to want this team to get, active at the deadline. And it's something I will credit Don Sweeney for. Don Sweeney it's part of the reason, again, why this team is where it is right now, is Don Sweeney has made real attempts to try and improve the team around the trade deadline. And I think I might at this point be more interested right now. And I'm not committing myself to this, but I'm just trying to take a big picture approach with this team and, how they can be good for a long period of time and not just, oh, hey, this team is overperforming. Let's see if we can catch lightning in a bottle. That doesn't interest me. What interests me are the Alex Steves of the world, a guy that was on paper, good team in Toronto, but was never going to crack that lineup because of just the dearth of talent that they had night in, night out. Well, if this is who Alex Steves is, well, hey, thank you very much, Toronto, the Marlies, wherever he was, playing, skating around. We'll take that off your hands. Best of luck to you. Have a nice season. If they can identify guys in other teams that maybe they're not getting the opportunity and maybe there is a chance for them to come here and have success, I think those are the moves I'm looking for. Unless you can make an argument that X, Y, and Z are coming out of Providence and it's going to be fine and for the next couple of years they're going to have that talent. I don't see it. I don't see it. So if you can get some guys right now who did not have chances on other teams who are still in that 24, 25, 26 year bracket, I am far more interested in trying to build the team out that way if you're not going to be able to draft anybody that can come help this team in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I'm an out on them adding at the deadline. Unless it's like a depth of defenseman, like I'm not adding.
Your Orlovs, Hathaways, Bertuzzi, like those kinds of moves. Like, look, they're fun when your team is like a cup contender. But again, and you might disagree with me, Ty, but I think part of the reason why they've ended up where they are is because of all the draft capital they have moved on from. And then you look around and go, oh, man, we really don't have anything down the pipeline. So you have to keep adding and keep throwing your fribble line guys. And you have to go and outsource for those guys instead of bringing up young players from Providence.
Yeah, and I think that, when you do have success bringing up Jonathan Aspero, and you do have success bringing up Alex Steves, and you have some other guys down there that you might want to get a look at between now and the end of the year, and you have Matthew Poitras, and you have Fabian Lysell, you can either leverage those players into a trade, or you can say, you know what, we're getting as much from Alex Steves and Jonathan Aspero as we would from a guy that we would trade and lose a second-round pick to acquire. That's kind of I think that's the success. That's a secret part of their recipe there that's helping them win games right now. But I don't think they're there yet, right? And if they're going to trade a pick, I think it's a Florida pick, not any of their own, because you imagine Florida's going to be better a year ago. But right now, maybe you want to hang on to that too, because you're like, well, they're all getting kind of old. Maybe that's going to be a good pick for you, and you don't want to move that just yet. But you got to stop the bleeding, right? Like at a certain point, because I feel like now we are seeing this now where teams are not trading. They're really not trade or I should say stars aren't hitting the open market. Everyone's being retained. Even Adrian Kempe was retained by the LA Kings, a guy that probably could have made big money on the open market because the market thinned out so bad. But you got to build through the draft. You got to acquire. That's how you get the star players, in my opinion. They got to do more of that. They can't keep trading first round picks. And you know what? They got 2 first-round picks right now, back-to-back. They're looking pretty good at BC. Dean Letourneau is having a good year. James Hagan's having a good year. They can be even better, in my opinion. So if that happens, that's perfect. But they're still not fully there yet. So don't rush it. You got to see it through.
It's going to be an unpopular opinion to go, look, I know they're good, but just be patient. I don't think fans are going to want to hear that. But that's, again, look at where you are. You've made big swings, and unfortunately you've gotten everything but the hardware to go along for that effort of trying to build these teams out. And I commended them at the time, but you also got to know that there is a bill that has to be paid for going all in every single year. Now, if you can have some kind of fun bridge team in the meantime that's still going to go out and win more games that they lose, I'm all for that, but not at the expense of hey, let's move on from more guys and try and bring in, some middle 6 guys or some second pairing guys. I know you need a right shot D. I get that. We get that call every week. I understand that. But if they can piece it together the way they've been piecing it together now, so when Higgins and Letourneau eventually make this team and there's a group around them that's really ready to go, then at that point, go crazy. I don't care. But right now, I would preach so much patience to this fan base.
Yeah, and it's different. It's different. I understand that Bruins fans, Boston fans, typically Bruins fans are also Red Sox fans, and they've been told to be patient for a long time. Different sports, though. Like, you are not going to get the Shohei Ohtani hit in free agency where you can just buy away your problems. Like,
sure.
Like Connor McDavid didn't even test the open market. He had every reason to. He chose not to. He stayed in Edmonton.
I'm going to stay in Edmonton.
Right. Leon Draisaitl a year ago. I thought Draisaitl for sure would test the market. Didn't do it. I thought Marty Necas would test the market. Didn't do it. These guys don't hit the market. They just don't. And so you have to build through the draft, and you have to restore the pipeline a little bit stronger before you make that trade for that player.
And I'm speaking from a total point of ignorance here, but I don't know if they're, like Quinn, we were just talking about Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes gets moved from Vancouver. They're going to see him in Minnesota tomorrow night. I don't know if there's a package right now that the Bruins could put together without completely gutting their team that could entice a Vancouver or whoever else is looking to move on from one of their top guys to trade them to Boston. I don't know if you're there yet. You absolutely can be, but I think it's just going to take a little more time than where we are right now.
Yeah, I mean, think about the Boston comp for that Quinn Hughes package is probably it's like Zacha, Letourneau, a first round pick, low ride. Like you're probably adding another first round pick because you don't have the prospects that compare to what Minnesota was able to part with, right? Like they had a 20-year-old prospect that they took 12th overall, also went in that trade. Who's that for you? It's not James Higgins. You're not trading James Higgins to bring in Quinn Hughes for a year and a half or 2 years, whatever it is. So that's an example of kind of how far away they are from making that next big move. Like, they got to add to their pipeline still a little bit. All right, 617-779-0985. More of your phone calls and Bob Beers on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
The Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show will continue with Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and
Minnesota. Bob, how are we doing this morning?
Hey, how are you, Ty?
Was it worse going from Winnipeg to Minnesota? Like what? Because Ryan really built it up as being absolutely miserable out there today. Is it truly as bad as it is?
It's not bad. It's fine. It's fine.
So Ryan's a softie.
It's cold. I mean, look, I lived several years in Buffalo, so I mean, I think I know what cold weather feels like. It's not that bad.
Bob, we highlighted that Corrali goal coming back here, and the Bruins welcomed David Pastrnak back to their lineup on Tuesday. Really unique, I thought, line combinations in that game, and really achieved a balance that we haven't seen in some time. Obviously, they go back to Lindholm and Geekie by the end of Thursday's game, but what did you think of that lineup complexion for Marco Sturm and the Bruins?
Well, you lost Arvidsson, right, partway through that game against Winnipeg. I mean, is there a first line and a fourth line right now? I don't think there really is. I mean, I think there's different styles to the way that they play, but they're being used equally and effectively, right? When you look at like the Corrali line, when they're together, they're really effective at putting the puck behind the D, going to work on the forecheck. That's St. Louis, the goal in St. Louis, Katzelik's second goal. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a perfect example. Put the puck behind the D, Corrali gets in there first, wins a battle. Jeannot does his job, and they get to the front of the net, and all of a sudden the puck's in the back of the net. So it's a very simple game, but that's the way they have to play in order to be effective. And then Pasternak's got his own style, and Geekie's got his own style, and it's four equal lines right now, just a different way of going about it.
Yeah, and when you look at that again, the Corrali line, right? It feels like that's what Marco Sturm is talking about. Post-game on Thursday, he mentions how, the style that this team plays, they want to grind teams down, right? And then by the third period, whoever they're playing doesn't have enough left in the tank. That line, that Corrali line, as you mentioned, feels like a line that can really excel and dominate games in that fashion for this team.
Well, who comes out after a goal is scored?
That line.
That line.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That tells you what Marco Sturm thinks of that line. It kind of personifies like the way that they want to play. You have different players. You have different styles of players. I mean, Pasternak's elite NHL player. He's going to play his own game, but that line's going to play a straight line. Put the puck behind the D, pound them. It's as simple as possible, but they do that. So I'm curious what they do tomorrow, because if Arvidsson's out and Eyssimont, I assume would be Eyssimont or Viel. I would assume one of those two is going to come in. If it's Eyssimont, where they play him and how they kind of dole out the lines tomorrow. So very curious what happens in practice today. We'll find that out later this morning. But and then defensemen, defense-wise, how they're gonna dole out the pairs, because a guy like Lohrei the other night in St. Louis was okay, and then Lohrei in Winnipeg was not nearly good enough. And they need him right now with especially if you got an injury to Aspero.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at that a guy that we haven't talked a ton about, obviously because we haven't seen him a lot, is Victor Soderstrom. I didn't think he had a great preseason training camp, but it feels like
he was okay.
He feels like he's been decent enough, right? What have you thought of his game so far?
Yeah, no, I think he's been okay. But can you put Soderstrom and Lohrei together against a potent Minnesota team? I don't. Yeah. You put them together against St. Louis, and they were pretty good. I think Soderstrom was fine. He was the easiest guy to take out of the lineup, right? When McAvoy came back, but now if he has to play in front of or in place of Aspero, how do you pair up your defensemen? I think it's going to be a heavy workload for the top four defensemen against Minnesota, because there's certain matchups you're not going to want, and if you're going to play if you're going to play Peak and Lindholm together, and you're going to play Zadorov and McAvoy together, they're going to see a lot of ice time against Minnesota.
And speaking about McAvoy, when we were speaking last week, I don't think we thought he would be back this quickly, but he was, and he was, I thought, very effective in that game in Winnipeg.
Oh, loved his game.
I thought that was a surprising return in terms of the timeline, but also the performance. I thought he was just fantastic.
Yeah, I was hearing he would be back for Sunday. Like that would be his first game back. So I was a little surprised to see him in the lineup against Winnipeg, but happy to see him back. He was running on some pretty good adrenaline in that game. He was flying, especially early. So, his numbers speak for itself, right? I mean, you talked about it a little bit earlier. I was listening to the show, and, his numbers when he was on the ice compared to when he was off the ice and what he was able to do. He's an impact. And if Corrali could have finished that goal in the second period, he kept the puck in at the blue line, and all 5 Winnipeg Jets were like over by the Bruins bench, and Corrali was all by himself in front. I don't know if you remember that chance or not.
Yeah.
He almost had too much time, right? You just want to be able to, if you're Corrali, you just want to get it and figure it out real quick. But he had too much time, and he wasn't able to bury it. But like that was another play by McAvoy. He makes an impact on the game, and he gives like Peake is a good player. He gives you everything he's got. If he's your third pairing right defenseman, you've got a really good decor. And he's playing when McAvoy was out. He was your number one right defenseman. He was your only right shot, and it's just I like him as a player. I hope he stays here. He's an unrestricted free agent after the season. I hope they can get the deal done for him. But when he's your third pair right defenseman, that's a good decor, and they don't have that just yet. They're close, but they don't have it just yet.
Yeah, and you mentioned McAvoy and the adrenaline of returning, and how he's looking out there. Is that something that this team is going to have to? This sounds weird, but almost monitor and make sure like he's feeling all right, and that like they're not over taxing him out of the gate here, just given how important he is to this team.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to do when you got a guy that wants to play and he looks like he did the other day. It's hard to keep him off the ice, right? And some of it depends on the game. If you're in a tight game, and he'll play all situations. If you're in a blowout game, whether it's one way or another, we've had a couple of blowout games against us this year. There's a couple of blowout games for us, but then you can monitor a little ice time. But if it's a close game, you want him on the ice all the time. So, it's hard to regulate the ice time that way. You're either all in or you're not. And right now with the schedule and the way that it is, it's hard to keep him on the bench if it's a tight game.
Yeah, and jumping back up front here, we were talking about the forwards earlier. I wanted to ask you, watching on TV is different than watching in person. Pastrnak, does he look like he's still limited right now, despite how effective he's been, just skating wise? Like, are you noticing anything with David Pastrnak besides the points that we have to kind of keep an eye on here as well?
He looked way better against Winnipeg than St. Louis. St. Louis was a bit of a struggle for me. Still ended up with 3 assists, so it's kind of bizarre, right? But he looked way more effective against Winnipeg. He was more of a factor against Winnipeg. Liked his game there, and he seems to be fine now. So, not really worried about him at all. And
when he has 2 goals, he has 7 points now since coming back. He moves into sole possession at 5th place all time on their all-time goal scoring list. Guys like him are just so impressive to watch. It feels like, because they're such unique talents. When he's back in action and he's productive, right off the jump, what kind of pressure release valve is that for the rest of the roster in terms of how they're able to slide into place, knowing that offense just comes so easily to a player like David Pastrnak?
Well, I talked about it the other day, or we talked about it the other day. It's just like you can fall into a trap of saying, "Oh, Pastrnak's back, we can relax," and that's the worst thing they can do, because we we talked about it right when you had me on. It's like every line has kind of an identity, and you have to play a certain way in order for this team to have success. And, the Corrali line, if Jeannot and Kastelik are on it, they play a certain way. They're not going to play Pasternak's way. But they have to have that identity if they're going to be effective. And the worst thing you do is say, "Oh, Pasta's back. We can take our foot off the gas. We can relax because he's going to do all the work." And when McAvoy comes back, we can relax. And I think that was the most impressive thing about the last 2 wins that they've had is that they haven't changed their identity. Those guys can play their own game. But they haven't changed the identity of what they need to do in order to win games. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's the most important thing for them. Their special teams have been excellent. Their goaltending has been really good. Their structure, for the most part, has been good. They've had a couple of breakdowns here and there. They've had a couple of bad periods here and there. But their compete level has been off the charts this year. Really, like when they've been down in games, they battled back. There's only been 2 games this year that we were talking about the other day. There's only been 2 games that they've been out of it. One was against Ottawa in Ottawa, and the other one was probably the day after Thanksgiving against the Rangers. Other than that, they've been in every game. And, they've let games get away from them once in a while, but they've always battled to come back in games, or for the most part. So I think that's that's something to be proud about, and they're in a good spot right now. They in a really competitive Atlantic division. You want to say it's a bad division? Okay, that's fine, but they got 19 wins. That's pretty solid right now. When you look around the league, they're right there with some of the top teams. I'm not putting them in a category with, Colorado or Dallas or anything like that, but they're competitive and they compete every night.
And is that compete a reason why there should be more belief maybe externally, because there's belief in that room. We know that. We talk to the players. We know how they believe in their system and their structure. But that compete, that's been there, as you said, pretty much every night this season. And I think, you can look at expected numbers and the fancy metrics and all that, but doesn't take into account the compete, right? And how this team does fight. And it's made a believer out of me, where I'm just looking at this team and I'm like, they keep winning games. They keep winning, and I'm not worried about the bottom falling out on them because of that quality of their team. Is this just who they are at this point, and we have to stop, maybe nitpicking here and there and say, hey, they just keep winning?
Well, what did they say at the beginning of the season, Ty? It was what areas needed to be better from last year? It starts with goaltending. That's been better. It starts with defensive structure. That's been better. It continues to special teams, both top 10. So and I think that they're scoring a little bit more than people expected them to score. So I don't know if I'm there yet in terms of, this is a bona fide playoff team, but I love the way they compete every night. And when they have those off nights, like the 2 games we talked about, that game in Ottawa was so bad. It was just, I couldn't believe it. I was watching. And then they bounce back with a win after that. So, and they go on a pretty good roll. You've won 4 in a row. You won 5 out of the last 6. You got a tough matchup tomorrow, but they have to play this afternoon. Minnesota does. So you're in a pretty good spot, and then you've got a good home run of home games, I should say, leading up to Christmas. And you've been really good on home ice. You've been really good at the TD Garden. So there's a lot of room for optimism, but still a lot of work to be done. Not even halfway there yet.
Which is crazy because it feels like they've played 1 billion games. We're not even at the halfway. We're not even at the halfway point of this season. Bob, before I let you go, I asked Ryan about this, and I wanted to ask your thoughts as well. We saw this a year ago. Bruins trading their captain, but Vancouver trades Quinn Hughes to Minnesota. We're going to see Minnesota tomorrow, obviously, as you noted. What is the challenge of guarding a defenseman like that, just given the way that he can play and the lift he can bring to the ice on a nightly basis?
Well, I'm assuming he's going to play today, this afternoon. So looking forward to watching that game and seeing how he kind of fits in with this Minnesota team. They essentially traded 4 first-round picks for him.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pretty. I mean, it's a massive trade. But if he wasn't going to re-sign with Vancouver did whatever they could to move him. Minnesota was a little bit of a surprise, right? Because we had heard New Jersey because his brothers play there. We heard Detroit as a possibility because he kind of lives there. So this is a bit of a surprise. Billy Guerin kind of trying to swing for the fences. I'm just curious how it works. I think he's going to be. I think on paper it's going to be great. You know, you put him on a power play with Kaprizov and Boldy. Boldy's having a fantastic year.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden, Faber can kind of Brock Faber can play. It slots him in the right spot, right? He's probably playing a little bit above his whatever you want to call it. You put Quinn Hughes in that number one power play spot. All of a sudden, this is like on paper, it looks really good. So really curious to see how it looks this afternoon and then tomorrow. And I'm very curious, more curious to see how the Bruins kind of dole out their lines and D pairs tomorrow with a couple of the injuries they had the other day.
Yeah, if you were slotting them in, what would you want to do? Would you want to tinker maybe with separating Peak and Lindholm just to get a greater balance there on the road? What do you think is the go-to for this?
Well, they already did, right? They put Peak with Laura the other day, but that all changed after Aspro's injury. So they were trying to spread it out against Winnipeg. Knowing that you don't have the last change, you got to have a little bit of balance with your defense. So I'm curious of what they do tomorrow. I don't know if you can put Laura and Soderstrom together against Minnesota. Like I think that would be. I think you're going to see a lot of four defensemen tomorrow. That's what I'm saying. And you need guys to step up. Like Soderstrom, he's been okay, And I need Laura. I need more out of Laura. I definitely do. I've been saying that for a long time now. When he plays well, it looks good. But when defensively, he gets out muscled on a couple goals in the first period, and it's not good enough. So you need more out of him.
Yeah, it's going to be a big challenge for them, Bob. We thank you so much for joining us and look forward to hearing you on the call tomorrow's game. Sure, you're going to be happy to be back in Boston, too, beginning flying home. It's not a long road trip, but, it's a cold one.
It feels like a long road trip, and then we got a big one after Christmas. So we got some home games, before Christmas, which would be good. And the way that they played at home, hopefully that sets them up because that road trip after Christmas will be a tough one, out to Western Canada, and starts with Buffalo and then out to Western Canada and Seattle. And that's the last long road trip of the year for the Bruins, really. I mean, I know they've got Chicago and Dallas, but that's just a 2-game trip. So the last long one, and after that, there's not a lot of out of time zone games.
That's good. It's good for the Bruins, good for everybody. Good, get their body clocks right. And again, Bob, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing you on tomorrow's call.
You got it, Ty. Take care.
That was Bob Beers joining us on the Expert Hotline. Sponsorships, I believe, are available. Ryan, are they? I don't know.
I'm sure they are. I'll tell you, nobody knows the road schedule quite like a team broadcaster. They know
I know
exactly where they're going to be at what time of year during a hockey season.
Well, it's great because Bob has taught me, and this is why I love working with Bob. Bob has taught me not to look too far ahead. I'm always asking him about things that are a week in advance. He's like, well, let's get through today first. I'm like, you know what? That's a great way of looking at things because you never know in this league. You just never know. Like tomorrow, I never thought that I'd be talking about Quinn Hughes on the Wild. Never saw that one coming. Never, wasn't even on my radar. I was like, yeah, he's going to Jersey. Yeah, he's going to Detroit. But nope, it's Minnesota. So we will see him tomorrow. We got one more segment here. Your phone calls, Jake. I see you. Thank you for being so patient. We're going to get right to you here after a quick break on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Ty Anderson, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beers. This is The Shaw.
I wonder if the Bruins with their split lines had intended to have kind of like a home strategy and a road strategy with more balance on the road when they can't pick the matchups, and then at home having kind of like that, third line being really strong and defensive against other teams' top lines. And then the other thought I had, watching Montgomery, his Blues teams, playing more of a man-to-man style, makes me kind of wonder, for how many years the Bruins just kind of like brought in a new coach, but the coach felt like they kind of had to keep playing the old Bruins defensive structure. And it's been really and not that it's working for Montgomery's Blues, but it's been really refreshing to see Sturm just making this team look completely different. And I do wonder if, coaches being kind of, kind of handcuffed by the general success and feeling like, the old, which I think stupid adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can still evolve it if it's going really well, and it doesn't feel like anyone maybe took charge and did enough, and maybe that, thwarted our potential. So anyway, a lot of thoughts, but appreciate your thoughts.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thank you, as always, for the call, Jake. I think that, they've had so many moving pieces, right, in recent years, and it's just hard to sustain this model of success that has sort of been expected to a certain degree, right? Like, I always say this: if you're not changing, you're not winning. Even McDonald's realized they couldn't only sell hamburgers. Why is anyone else any different in any walk of life? You always got to find something else.
I never really understood sports until that analogy, so thank you for expanding my horizons.
They got the big and tasty, they got the Filet-O-Fish, now they got tenders or something
Everyone's
like that.
Excited about the snack wrap coming back.
And it's ass if you've had it. It's not good anymore. It's not good. I don't know what they did to it. It ain't great, though. But no, to Jake's point, there's people in St. Louis now that are kind of going, is Monty a good coach, or is he like a shot of injection, to get you going, and then it kind of peters out? He's like a comet, It's great for a hot minute, and then it's no good. That's a real thing. Let's take one more break here. Can we? Or are we running right to... Yeah, we're going to run right to the end here. This has been the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show. Bruins, winners of 4 straight. Play Minnesota tomorrow. Then it's back home. Utah on Tuesday, I believe it is. Start of a homestand. They got another weekend back-to-back, which is so weird. They don't do those. Another weekend back-to-back next week. I can't remember the last time they've done that at home, let alone twice in the same season. Nevertheless, we will have you covered the whole way. 985sportshub.com. The game tomorrow will be on Country 102.5 because of Patriots postgame, so check that out then. And we will talk to you next week here, again, on the Shaw's and Star Market Hockey Show.
Boston's home for sports. 98.5 The Sports Hub.